I gotta say this, I thank you all for coming.
Thank
It's
you.
most important to me and to a lot of other gentlemen that are in other parts of this country that could not be here. I found it very interesting to think about this. In the past, we were a combination of people from California, Texas, Ohio, Michigan, New York, Alabama, Florida, and we all come together, and Quinn was a part of this on it. Now, I'm going to try and take you through a little bit of what Quinn went through over there. Some will hear it twice. I don't mean to do that, but I'm going to kind of ad lib. I kind of found out here the other day when I got out here, since I'm from Michigan, that Quinn was quite a writer, and he had quite a satire on some of the notes he sent back to some of the people here in New York. I found it quite humorous, but I also found strength in his notes as to what he was saying to the people back here. It was not nice out there in the jungle, but he tolerated it, and he tolerated all of us and all our different characters and all our, as Fern called it, we're sometimes Midwesterners or Easterners or Southerners, or you do this and you do that, or what else. Anyway, I'll go to reading this, what I got, and hope it makes it through. This here is to Sergeant Richard Quinn, Memorial Day of 2018, and even more so since you folks dedicated this to Quinn. And Quinn was just a much part of us. I am Sergeant Donald Ketchum of Company D, 1st Battalion, 8th Cav, 1st Aero Cavalry. And I want to thank you and thank Fern for her great tenacity in pulling this together. If she had not contacted me 2 years? About 2 years ago, I had tried to assemble this in my head a couple of years ago and couldn't do it. It was kind of a little pain and agony on the last one that I had went through with Quinn. It was awful difficult and hard watching it and what you encounter out there, and to watch a bunch of people die in front of you. And he was one of them. Another one was Klaus, but I'll get to that anyway. This is to this memorial and event of the street sign dedication in the name of Sergeant Richard Quinn, a vital medic to the company of Company D, 1st Battalion, 8th Cav, when we were out there. Also, to all the Woodstock people, especially you people, for coming and dedicating this sign to Richard. He earned it. And all the officials, local, county, political officials, providing the necessary process to have this event. The company appreciates that. And there's another guy that Fern knows, and we have a guy in Oklahoma, and he knows very much about this and what's going on. And I'm trying to work with a photographer over here, and I've got to get some pictures of this, what he's getting, okay? Also, would like to express my appreciation to Terry Breitenstein here. This man has been a critical part of what we've been doing here, of the American Legion here in Woodstock, and working with Fern. I would like to express my appreciation in that of Company D, 1st Battalion, 8th Cav, 1st Air Cavalry, and the Point Platoon, which is what I was leading, for your dedication to this Memorial Day, and I thank you all. A bit of flavor for what Richard was going through and his experience on 12 July of 1970. And he was not my medic, but he was a medic that I called for and I was hollering for, because I had all my equipment and my radio shot out. Sight. Heavy triple canopy. We were in layers like this, and you had coverage. Canopy trees with a small open area that we moved into. Below the area filled with smoke from machine gun fire, smoke grenades, colors, yellow, purple, green, and sure enough, the enemy had those colors. When we had the helicopters coming in, the the little guys with the little, you don't know the names, but they come in with a machine gun overhead and they're just in the top of the trees up there and they fire through. Anyway, they were looking at us, and you don't holler the smoke color out. You just holler smoke is out, and then you wait for the color identification back. Well, they had the first three until I threw a red one. And to mark the company position, 2 overhead aircraft. Now, Richard was getting ready to come out. He was seeing the wafting of the trees from the low-flying helicopters immediately overhead and a large group of GIs laying down below. More visibly anxious in the midst of a firefight. A lot of noise. Hearing. Tremendous noise from the NVA element. The guy ahead of us, and I thought he was my front element, he ended up being the edge element, and Richard come off to my right, and he was in front of the main element up there. You had that noise from the NVA element immediately in front of us with their machine gun with continual firing. He just held down the trigger. Hollering and yelling at the top of one's lungs to call out for a medic. That was me. I was doing that calling because I had no radio anymore. Okay? And then you go into, for the initial injuries, I had no idea of how many injuries I had. I found out later my radio guy took a bullet through his clavicle and went out and passed through his stomach down there. I had no idea that until she's finding that out. Okay, now we're coming up, and on the start of the firefight, the listening to the rotor wash from the helicopters hanging just above the trees. The company forward artillery officer walking in the 105 millimeter howitzer rounds and coming in nearer and nearer to our position that we were located at. The hiss of the smoke grenades spitting their colors out and hearing the machine gun rounds pass overhead your ear and hear many hit trees and back, and as they pass through one's gear or radio sets or spitting the dirt up as the rounds hit the ground with great velocity ahead of you. Then you have taste. The smoke was so thick in the small area we were in beneath the triple canopy, one could easily taste the sulfur from the smoke as they spit it out and clouded the entire area. But that still didn't stop the machine gunner up there. The smoke from the machine gunner coming out. You could see it coming out from behind the trees ahead of me. Still couldn't see anybody. And the rounds immediately ahead continually fired up there. Now you have smell. The smell of the sulfur from the smoke grenades. The colors, the cordite from the exploding artillery round as it wafted through our little area down there. It's enough to grip you. The only way he was going to hit anybody, you had to take us out too, if he brought him in that far. Then you had the jungle was alive with extraneous smells all of a sudden because you are full of rage, you are full of adrenaline. This man, as I watched him, you want to see a focused person, and he's full of adrenaline, and he's wired and very acute because you become that way during these situations. Touch. One's human body was alive with rage and adrenaline. The entire nervous system became acutely sensitive to one's surrounding rifles, machine guns. One could actually feel the vibration from each round fired. Smoke grenades, the feel on nylon hitting and dropping off on the backpacks. Then you have the machine gun rounds pass through one's backpack, and the ground vibrated on each round as it hit on or near you. Toward the end, as the adrenaline kicked in and the medic was called, not on the radio set, it was full of bullet holes, and all done by yelling. And I know somebody heard me because I have another sergeant that was in back of me that took control, and that's how this young man got out there. all done by yelling. Richard Quinn had the guts, and you should be proud of a man that has the nerve to do that, because some don't have that ability to do that in moments of need, which is what we needed right at that time. He had the guts to crawl forward from his position to the area under fire to work on fellow GIs, or in this case, another medic I was calling for up there. The prime aim being Doc Kloss, who was in my squad and to my right rear. He took a direct hit. I did not know if he was dead. It took incredible nerve to do what he did, and he was acting on it. You just never know until you get put into that position what's going to happen. As I watched him come out of the wood line, I could see the incredible focus and sustained watch for any movement ahead of him. The NVA were well hidden in the brush ahead. The company was not in a good position that day. This day, a dedication, is also a dedication in the name of some of those he came to assist, names I learned of later on, and which he would have found out should he not have been hit. Some unbeknownst to me at the time: Thomas Kloss, I didn't know how bad he was; Terry Lawrence, my radio guy; Steve Von Gannon, my machine gunner; Craig Sherwood, my grenadier; Jim Ostradowski, my backup, way in the back; Walter Cizik, he was my point man; and even my ex-MVA lead point up there, he was in the mix of it. And then I learned later on through Fern here about Thomas Hunt. And then another medic who I learned about this year. Now this is 40 years later for me, and I'm just learning that. As a cavalry company and platoon member, thank you all for coming to this. It is not just I, it is a guy named Eddie Nord that is in California, and it is a young man, Gordon Swenson, who assembles our website out there. They are following you people, and I appreciate that, and they do also, so thank you. And toward the end here, thank you all for this day of dedication to Sergeant Richard Quinn, a man I call now, after watching it, like nerves of steel, to come out and do that for us.